So let's start our show today with building and running a top producing team, and then we'll talk to Jeff in a few minutes about how to prepare your buyers for a counteroffer. So let me introduce Ron and Jane Pavelka. Jane Pavelka has been an integral part of Northern Sonoma County real estate market, having been one of the top producing agents in this market for the past 8 years. Jane and Ron formed their team in 2005. They're experienced real estate professionals with in-depth knowledge not only of Sonoma County and also the surrounding areas of Napa, Lake, and Mendocino counties. Jane and Ron have been part of the community of Cloverdale for over 20 years, having raised their 2 children, and they're very active in the local community. So Jane, Ron, thank you so much both for being here and helping everyone who's listening learn a little bit more about running a team and being willing to make the trip down to be live in our palatial studios here in Pleasanton to communicate with everybody and coming down from the wine country. So welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So let's just dive right in and get to questions because I want the audience to have an opportunity to pick from your brain. So the first question is, have you always worked as a team since starting your career in real estate, or just tell me how this whole thing started with you guys?
No. Well, no. I started in 2002.
Okay.
And my business built quite rapidly. Found myself working literally almost 24/7 and really enjoying what I was doing. And Ron?
Well, I was working in corporate America and got a little tired of it. I was traveling quite a bit.
Right.
And actually was working out of town. I ran a company in San Diego.
Got it.
So I was commuting from the little hamlet of Cloverdale to San Diego, which became quite cumbersome.
Sure.
Especially raising a family.
Yeah.
And I left the industry I'd been in for 30 years in 2004, took a year off, spent some time with my family.
Nice.
And decided I wanted to jump in on the fun with Jane and joined her in the beginning of 2005.
Okay.
So we created our team.
So you guys have been operating as a real estate team since 2005.
Correct.
Jane, you already had a business that had a certain level of success, a certain level of thrive to it.
Absolutely.
And you decided to combine your skill sets and see if you could take that team to the next level.
What I didn't have was marketing skills.
Got it. And I think we're going to dig in later on sort of how you guys bifurcate the roles and responsibilities and some of the importance around that. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now, let's, in the auspices of full disclosure, you guys are a team in business only, or your husband and wife team, or how do you?
Well, we're best friends.
Yes, okay,
it
good.
also happens that we've been married for almost 32 years.
Oh, that helps with being the best friend piece and the being married for 32 years piece.
Absolutely.
Those two things should go together. So we may turn this into Dr. Phil at some point, but I'm sure there are some people who are listening who how does that work where I know you guys are best friends and you seem like you still like each other, which is cool, but how do you do that when you're balancing work now, because there's no separation, right? Work, home, everything is the same.
Well,
how do you do that?
To be candid,
Yeah.
we'll spend 8-10 hours a day together in or around the office.
Yeah.
But because we have different roles within our own organization, we can end up at the dinner table at 7 o'clock at night and be talking really for the first time.
Got it.
Of any kind of quality discussion, because we have such diverse day-to-day functions within our organization. We might hear each other on the phone. We might wave at each other. If we're lucky, we might have lunch. But we're very much apart as we're together during the course of the day.
Okay.
And it works.
Yeah.
It really works.
And that's what matters the most, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The best system
yes.
is the one that works and the one that you use. So,
Yes.
And it's obviously working for you guys, which is important.
Yes.
Do you ever have to create conditions where it's like, okay, tonight we're not going to talk about the business, or is it just sort of free form? You don't have that much structure around it.
It's free form.
Okay.
Yeah. We seem to know when.
Enough is enough.
Yes.
That's the best friends piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, you can't see it out there, those of you that are listening, but they really do like each other. It's kind of gross. No, I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding. All right, next question. The next question, you talked about this, you touched on it already earlier once, but let's talk about the talents that each one of you bring to the table, and how do you split up the roles and responsibilities?
Well, that came natural because we've been together so long, obviously, as friends and in our marriage. But the biggest thing that we can tell people who are looking to build a team is to really understand who has which strengths, and to accentuate those strengths, and to respect those strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And if one person is better at the paperwork, like Jane is, she likes the detail. She likes working with the clients face to face, hand in hand, showing the product. I let her handle that. She likes doing the residential component of our business. I'm not really excited about residential, so I handle a lot of the commercial
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the, we do some vineyards and some ranch properties up where we are in northern Sonoma County. So I handle that component because I like that. I'm a marketing person. That's my education and my background. And so I handle all of our branding, all of our marketing, keep us on top of the world, let people in town know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And she continues to do the day-to-day function.
Okay.
And it, again, we know our strengths and weaknesses, and I don't attempt to do the paperwork, and she doesn't attempt to do the marketing or handling some of the other things that she's not so comfortable with.
So go ahead.
No, and by understanding each of our strengths,
Mm-hmm.
we don't seem to bother each other. You know, he doesn't step on my toe, I don't step on his, and it works really well.
You guys are being very nice, but at some point between forever, right, there must be some time where there's a little bit of toe stepping, or you just so good at dancing together that you never, for example, if you had some feedback on marketing, do you have a process for how you can communicate that? And the reason that I'm digging in on this is not because I'm trying to start a fight between a husband and a wife. That's not it at all. Is one of the reasons I see teams fail is there's not this cohesive communication between partners in the team. And in my experience, you need really clear lines of demarcation, which you guys have, right? Here's what I do. Here's what you do. Let me do what I do, and I'll let you do what you do. Mm-hmm. But how do you handle it when you don't agree? So, for example, Jane, if you had a marketing question or a comment or an issue with some piece of marketing, is there a system for that, or is it just you just change the locks at the house and he can come back in when he fixes it, or how do you guys handle that, or does it never happen?
No, we discuss it. There's always going to be
Times when we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
disagree on issues, and we'll go through it methodically and discuss what the end goal is, what the result is we're looking for, and which is the best way to get there. I mean, all of us in our professions sometimes don't see the forest through the trees.
Sure.
And it's nice to step back and get another opinion, or to look at it from 10,000 feet, a couple different people, get an idea. And again, when you're keeping the end in mind or what the result is, it's easy to change your opinion sometimes based on talking with your partner and or other people in your community, if in fact that's what you're looking for to accomplish that goal.
Okay, good. At the end of the day, if it's a tie, who wins?
The boss.
I do.
The boss. Okay, good. So, by the way, he said the boss and she said I do. So the reason that I asked that question is that's another piece that I see a lot of teams fail in establishing that. At the end of the day, though, your partnership, whether you're married or not, your professional partnership or otherwise, someone has to make the call sometimes. Someone at the end of the day has to be the decision maker. It can be highly collaborative, tons of input, and it can be, 49-51. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you still need someone who is that 51% vote, because there are hard decisions in business that you have to make sometimes. And collaboration is important, but someone's got to be the driver of the bus. And it could be that someone is the driver and the other one is driver 1A. They're right next to each other. It's total collaboration, but someone still needs to be the decision maker. So it sounds like you guys highly collaborative. I'd say even 99% of the time you are joint decision making. But when the rubber meets the road, if someone had to make a call, how does that work?
A lot of times I think what people see is they see that it's Jane, me, that gets all the credit.
Sure.
Jane's the one that makes the sale. Jane's the one that's the closer. But what they don't realize is without Ron and his marketing skills and being out there and everything, they don't, a lot of times don't see that part. But you're right, one person does have to, and it seems most of the time I seem to get all the credit, but it's both of us.
Well, yeah, and
it is 50-50.
And you're making a lot of the final decisions relative to the transaction because you're dealing with the client. You're dealing with the corporate structure, and you've got that day-to-day knowledge. And so I'm abiding by what you believe needs to be done.
Well, like most successful businesses and most successful executive teams, whether it's an executive team of 2 or 20, you're allowing the person with the domain expertise to make the day-to-day decisions, right? And
exactly.
So my intuition is that most of the time, if it was a marketing decision, you may seek feedback, Jane, but you're going to defer to Ron.
Oh, yes.
And if Ron thinks you should do it, you may, I don't totally get it. I may ask questions. I understand marketing, but not to the depth of knowledge that you do. So if that's what you think we should do, then that's probably what we should do. And vice versa with day-to-day, what I'll call real estate operations for your business, where, how to write a counteroffer or those kind of things. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
very
good.
much so.
All right, awesome. So let's get a little high level now. So what does it take in today's market to be a top producing team? What's important? Let's pretend Keith was getting ready to start a team, and I came to you and said, look, I've got a pretty good business right now. I'm looking to take on a partner. And what do you think I should know to be a top producing team in today's market?
I think we touched on part of that earlier of understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses, respecting those, and utilizing those to accomplish your goal. One of the biggest mistakes that we see in other teams is that they try to replicate the work. 2 people do the same thing. 2 people go to the same listing appointment. 2 people work in the same paperwork. So all you're doing then is you're just taking one prospect and you're doubling your work for the same return.
You're not getting any leverage that way.
You're not getting any leverage. And so it's really to look at, again, what each person brings to the team, where you want to go as far as luxury versus standard residential versus property, commercial. And we do go on listing appointments together periodically. We do work together in some respects with a client. But for the most part, as we mentioned earlier, during the course of the day, we might spend 8 or 10 hours in the office working on 5 or 6 different completely non-related projects.
Right. So how you guys picked your partnership because you're married, which is great. But if someone was out there picking a partner, should you think about stacking strengths or covering weaknesses? Meaning, if I'm a great lead generator, but I'm terrible at the follow-up, follow-through, and that sort of thing, but get me in the living room and I'm really good. Should I get someone else who's really good in the living room just like I am? Or should I get someone else who maybe is the yin to my yang? What's the right approach in your guys' opinion?
I believe the second.
Okay.
Yes, because that's kind of where I was in 2002 to 2005. Put me with the client and I'll get the listing and get the home sold. But I was doing 0 marketing.
Got it.
Absolutely 0. And I wasn't good at it. And I didn't want to do it. Ron is out there in their faces. He's the one that helps the little old lady across the street and kisses the little babies and gets us to functions. And
he's shaking babies and kissing hands or whatever that one is.
However that goes.
He puts it on my calendar.
Good.
And that allows me to continue to do what I do best.
Great. Good.
Well, that allows us, back when she started, she was doing 12, 13 transactions a year. We're doing between 35 and 50 transactions a year at this point.
Yeah.
So it's the ability to, again, use each other's strengths to increase that volume and service more clients in your marketplace.
Great. So the next question we have is sort of hours worked. How important is it that you work 40 hours a week on your business, or kind of what's a week in the life?
Oh, you've got the perfect response for that. Go ahead.
Well, 40 hours is kind of a misnomer because you might be able to take half a day on Wednesday off, but then you're going to work 20 hours on Thursday. So, But realistically, again, I think all of us that have been in the business for a while see that you have to treat it as a job or as a career. You've got to put in that 8 hours a day. Sometimes, yes, you take off a couple hours here or 2 or 3 days there, but you're always on. You're always smiling. You've got to be out there working a transaction, working your clients, talking to people, being involved in the community. And for us, because we're in such a small community of 8,800 people, and we're an island, and our closest next community is 15 miles away, sometimes work for us is attending the Rotary Club function on Saturday night.
Sure.
Where we're wanting to eat dinner and relax, but by the same token, you're smiling,
network
shaking hands, and networking,
yeah,
answering all those real estate questions.
Yes.
But realistically, you have to put 40 hours a week minimum in the job, we believe, to be successful.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I mean, I think that balance is a myth, right? This whole balanced life thing is totally silly. No one has a balanced life. There are moments in time where you'll be balanced, and the beautiful thing about this industry and this business is that you can steal a half day here or there. You can steal a 3-day weekend if it makes sense. But then you also have to not steal the half day, too many half days in a row, or you're not going to get the results you want. And so that's the balance. Isn't really time management, it's task management. And I've found that a lot of professional real estate people either err on one side or the other. They're either really good at stealing the half day, and then they don't get the result they want, or they don't steal enough half days and they start to get burnt out. And so that's the balance is, man, it's been 3 weeks since, I've been working for 3 weeks straight. Let's go ahead and take a 3-day weekend this weekend. Okay, let's do that, right? Well,
again, being a team, there's times when she needs to get away for a day or two or half a day, and she can do that, and I can cover, and vice versa. So that part of the team helps substantially. But getting away also is important. If you don't get away from the business and clear your head, that's suicide.
Yeah.
That's just business suicide. I will tell you real quickly, a couple weeks ago we were in Utah for a while on a little vacation, and we found ourselves with no cell phone, no computer, but we had work to do. So we had to drive 8 miles from our campsite to a plateau at 9,000 feet, overlooking the entire southwestern part of Utah.
In our car.
In our car, with our computers and cell phones on, making calls. And
that sounds like an awesome vacation.
It was the most beautiful office.
But beautiful office, right? Yeah.
But you can never get away.
No. Well, it's a different radio show for a different time. I would challenge you on that. You can get away. You just have to create it. Create the space. Because if you're not fully unplugged, you're not fully unplugged, right? But different radio show for a different day. Okay, so let's talk about let's just take the last year. What's been the most challenging part for your team, and how have you managed it? So what have you learned just real specifically in the last year?
Boy, it's a couple of things. I think low inventory. Low inventory has been the most difficult right now. Lots of buyers.
Yeah.
And trying to keep them happy.
The buyers.
The buyers happy.
Stay tuned for Jeff's part, because that's part of what we're talking about is
fabulous.
Helping create the right mental framework for the buyers. So, but tell me a little bit about that. How have you managed trying to keep buyers happy?
Communication.
What's that mean?
Even if there's nothing available, is calling them, keeping them engaged, keeping them active, trying to educate them on how to search. That's been another big challenge in the multiple listing. They feel like if they go to 5 different websites, they might find something hidden in there.
Right. The secret stash of properties that no one else knows about. Yeah, if only. Yeah, if only.
Yeah. And just staying in contact with them and reminding them that it'll happen. And, of course, multiple offers is difficult. A lot of the buyers, I'm finding a lot of young buyers back out again, which is wonderful. But they don't have a lot of patience, and they get very frustrated.
How many offers do you, either one of you can answer, how many offers do you think a buyer has in them before they burn out?
Ooh.
Best guess. Whatever your experience is.
Maybe 3.
Yeah. That's.
Maybe.
I mean, I think
it just depends. I mean, some, I had one where I just started working with her, and her very first offer, and there were 5 offers. She got beat by an all cash. And I received this long, frustrating
I can't do this, I'm out.
Yeah, and we had a long conversation. We went and had coffee. She understands now, and she thanked me for being able to vent to me. So you have to learn to not take things personally.
Right.
Not take things personally.
Yeah, I think buyers have somewhere between 3 to 5 offers in them. And it's such an emotional experience for a buyer because they're picking their home, right? And so that means they're picking their home 3 to 5 different times. And then losing it, 3 to 4 times if it's not until the 5th one that they win. So as a real estate professional, just sort of to go ruthless business logic, right? What we have to do is make sure that we see them progressing there's a curve that buyers go through from starting somewhere around I don't want to be in a competitive or a bidding war to I'll write, tell me what to write to win, right? And that's kind of the arc. Mm-hmm. And you need to see them moving through that arc as you're writing the second, third, fourth offer. Because otherwise, if they don't get up to speed quick enough, then you need to shift strategy and move towards showing only properties in the market 90 days or more, or 60 days or more that aren't going to be competitive. And are you okay with a flawed home because the rest of the market passed on it, et cetera, right? But there's only a certain number of offers that every buyer has in them. So you've got to help them navigate that process. Yeah.
Well, we also found ourselves doing something we'd never had, which was calling clients, calling potential sellers, really not knocking on doors of people we didn't know.
Sure.
Talking to homeowners, investors that we deal with, and talking to them about selling their house. Mm-hmm. We've got a buyer for you.
Creating some inventory.
Creating some inventory, mm-hmm. or creating that sale. And if we were successful at that, it would also allow us to then sell the home to the person that was maybe upsell. The person is going to sell their home for somebody to come in the back end,
right.
Then move them up or move them into a couple of different properties. Mm-hmm. And that's been okay for us the past year or so, but it's one of the arsenals, one of the tools in our arsenal to keep things moving forward.
Yeah, when in doubt, create more inventory for your own personal market.
Own personal market,
yeah, absolutely. Good strategy. Okay, so let's say we created a team. Let's pretend that Jeff and I just created a team, and it's just not working. And we're new in the business. We're not new in the business, but we're new in a team, and we're struggling in this market. What advice would you give Jeff and I? What would be the 1, 2, or 3 things you'd say we should look at to try to shift that?
The first thing I would say is first couple things I would say is to go back and discuss what was your purpose of building a team?
Smart.
What was your ultimate goal? Where did you want to be in 12 months, in 3 years, and in 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. And maybe try to take yourselves out of your own skin, mm-hmm. and go to 10,000 feet and look over where you are and what steps you've taken so far to get to those goals, and reevaluate where you should be.
Yeah.
And if you still feel that you can work together and you're going to accomplish that, it's a little rough patch in the road.
Sure.
Then keep working towards that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're definitely two strong closers and you're both to the same skill sets, in our opinion, or in my opinion, maybe you're not the right team.
Sure.
You really need that balance, that yin-yang you were talking about.
Yeah.
And go back to what you were doing before and maybe find another partner if that's what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Or, depending upon where you are in your real estate career, maybe you need an assistant, not a partner.
Right.
And that's another thing to look at. We have an assistant,
mm-hmm.
But she handles a lot of another business we have, which is property management.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, she can handle things when we're away,
mm-hmm.
and she doesn't get involved in the decision-making. But she's a third person to bounce things off of the office if we have some issues we're trying to overcome or deal with.
Good. So what I really glean from that is, if it's ever not working in any partnership, right, the key is communication. And sit down, detach the ego as best you can. Mm-hmm. Don't make it an ego-based discussion. Make it an idea-based discussion around, is this working for what you wanted? Is this working for what I wanted? Is this sort of feeding your professional soul? Is this feeding my professional soul? And if this was perfect, what would it look like? Right?
Exactly. Yep. And
if at the end of that it's, hey, this really isn't working for you or me, let's go ahead and shake hands and part friends, that's okay. Partnerships form and fail all the time, or form and deform all the time. It's not even failing. Getting out of a business partnership at the end of the day could be a good thing sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things, and I was going to save this for the end, but I'll mention it now, having led residential real estate professionals for a long, long time, I've seen a lot of partnerships form, and I've seen a lot of partnerships unform. It helps when you're married, because if you have to unform your partnership for any reason, they'll work that out in court, right? But if you aren't married, and even if you are, my recommendation to anyone forming a team or has recently formed a team is get a prenup. Craft your breakup agreement before you are mad at each other. craft your breakup agreement before you're frustrated with each other. Craft what you're going to do with leads, databases, everything, current open escrows. Craft all that while you love each other, while you're still excited about the team, while there's all that energy from that creative process. Craft that agreement up front. And then that way, hopefully it never happens. But if you ever do get to the point where it is time to dissolve the team, you've already pre-negotiated with each other while you liked each other on how you were going to do it. And there's a lot less miscommunication that way. Too often I see teams, a couple of agents get together in an office and they really enjoy each other's company and they really like brainstorming and they love having coffee together and they decide to form a team. And I think that's great. The team dynamic, as you guys are living examples of, can create an amazing result. But they don't think about the what if and, how are we going to handle open escrows if we dissolve the team? Or, we've done 32 deals in the last 24 months. Who gets those to go into their database if we decide we don't want to be a team anymore? So if you are forming a team or if you recently formed a team, get with your manager, get with me. I'm happy to help coach people through that process, or your manager can help coach you through the process of it doesn't have to be a legal document. It's just a Word document that everybody signs that says, if we break up, here's how we do it. Now, if you don't break up, you guys are best friends. You guys aren't going to have this issue, okay? But for everyone out there who's on the webinar who's either formed recently or in the process of forming a team, craft your breakup agreement when you love each other. In my experience, that's the best way to make sure that the other end comes out okay. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Someone can give me a spot on that. But what's your guys' you're in a team. You've experienced it. I know you're husband and wife. But what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's a wonderful idea. Absolutely.
Good.
And something to do, yes, when the relationship is in the good stage.
Yeah. It creates a lot less energy on the other side.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And can let you continue your momentum and keep your business whole and professional.
Exactly. Yeah.
Without too much of a bump in the road.
Right. Okay, good. Shifting gears now. You mentioned before the amazing result you guys have had, and congratulations. I think a team is really a great team when it doesn't double the business. It should more than double the business, right? It shouldn't be a multiple. It should be an exponential growth.
Exactly.
So it has resulted in more business for you guys. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things that we've done also, which is not very common in this marketplace, is since we're in a small community, we created a property management company. I would never do property management if I was in Berkeley or San Francisco or even Pleasanton. It's a dirty business. But what we found ourselves doing was having investors buy properties. We could talk the talk, but we couldn't necessarily walk the walk once they bought the property. And when they wanted it managed, they would have to go to another real estate agent in the community. And we have a very small pool of real estate agents.
Sure.
So by building that business up to about 130 doors, 140 doors in the community, it allows us we have a lot of built-in clients.
Right.
We have investors that are looking to buy property, and now we can not only talk the talk, but we can walk the walk. And we handle their property for them, obviously. We have some investors that have bought property from us that we've never met before, and they've got 4 or 5 properties that we manage for them. By the same token, allows us to go to owners that we know might be on the fence about continuing to own investment property and manufacture that sale.
Right.
And say, are you ready to sell your property now? And we can move the tenant in there to purchase it. We might have another investor looking at it. And, of course, the market today is ripe for first-time home buyers.
Right.
So a lot of the tenants that are paying $1,500 or $1,800 a month rent can buy a nice home for quite a bit less than that and
Right.
be in their first home. Or maybe they're buying a home again after a short sale. That's the other thing we're seeing now is we're seeing people come out of that short sale situation from 3 and 4 years ago with the ability to buy homes right now, and they are closing. So it's that's one of the things we've done to build our business.
So what's interesting is, and you were really tactical, which I think is great, but the reason you were able to add that component to your business was because of the forming of this professional partnership.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's Ron, not
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm solely real estate. Ron doubles up.
So how would it have gone if you would have tried to create your own property management division for your business and done that without Ron? How would that experience have been like for you?
It wouldn't have.
Right. It wouldn't have gone at all.
No.
So and this is sort of echoing what you guys have said throughout our conversation, which is great, which is look at your business holistically, right? And for some partnerships that are formed out there, property management might be a horrible idea, right? But maybe starting a geographical farm might be the perfect idea, or whatever business component you're looking to add. But if you're forming a partnership, you should think about it from the standpoint of, okay, here's the business I'm currently running, and this part's running pretty well. This is working. If your current residential real estate sales business isn't working, this is another one of my soapboxes, but you can't take, in my experience, two people who aren't having all the success that they want and put them together and create success. You've got to have that baseline of business that you need to get a result, and then how can you take that and exponentially grow it, right? Yes. And what business unit, if I was going to partner with Kathy and we were going to start a real estate team, Kathy could really help me because of her years of experience in geographical farming, right? And we could pick a community together, and she could handle all the marketing pieces. She would make sure that they go out, and I'll go knock the doors, and that's very clearly line of demarcation. And she's got a pretty good sales business, and I've got a pretty good sales business, but she's never knocked her farm in her life, and I'm just a door-knocking nut guy, right? Calluses on my knuckles, no problem. So we can bifurcate the business really well, and we shouldn't double my production and double Kathy's production. We should more than double. Exactly. Right? It should be exponential growth. Right. So, and you guys have done a really good job of that, and this property management component is just a good example. Yeah.
That's dirty work.
Yeah, it's dirty. Yeah. By the way,
don't
do it. Yeah. And if you are thinking about doing it, go talk to your manager first. We have some rules and regulations around that, and we'll help you do it. But again, I agree with the right business to add is the strength and the core competency of the partner. And how does that feather into the already existing business? Right. Yes. And in this example of you guys, Ron was coming in kind of after the fact, and so it was just what could he bring to the team. If you have two agents that are already in the business, what can each other bring to each other's business? Right. All right, let's go over your tips. You gave us 4 tips, and I think we've covered most of these, but let's just kind of drill them in, and just in case we missed any, we'll talk about them a little deeper. So tip number 1, identifying, respecting, and utilizing each other's strengths so as to not, all caps, duplicate efforts. I think we kind of dug in on this pretty well, but anything else you'd like to add around just the duplication of efforts?
And again, that doesn't mean that you don't see each other every day.
Right.
Or, right. You can go to listing appointments together. You can cooperate on various things. But when the day is said and done, if we spend more than 10% of our day working on the same project, we're probably duplicating. We're not utilizing our time the best we could be.
What percentage of buyer appointments are you both at?
Buyer appointments?
Yes, like get to know you, showings, that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's
so 0.
You're at more than I am.
Yeah,
probably 70%. You're at 100. I'm probably at 30 to.
So you might sit in on maybe 30% of the buyer initial buyer consultations or showing or that kind of stuff.
Well, and because of what I do in the community and because of my marketing background, I'd say probably 70% of the calls come through me.
Okay.
So I'm discussing them and then giving them to Jane.
When do you hand them to Jane?
As soon as I can.
Good answer.
As soon as I can.
Yeah. And then what's interesting, though, is the reason I'm asking these questions is there can sometimes be an inclination from one of the partners to be, I've handed this over to my partner because she was going to run the buyer now, but I want to stay attached to it, right? And I want to be involved in the process because it's, quote, my buyer, or they contacted me first. And if you don't let go of that, somewhere in there, your answer is as soon as humanly possible, but if you don't let go of that, somewhere in there, you are duplicating efforts, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's what I do.
Right.
And he knows that, and
right.
And it's not because I tell him that's what I want to do. It's just the way it works.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I think if you keep that way, now a non-married partner
right.
might be a little different.
Sure.
I can see how that might happen.
Sure. Okay. So your advice, get married to your partner. I like it. I like it. Then all the money goes to the same house. You'll never break up. All right, I'm going to skip one of these because I really want to get into the third one on your list because I think it's an important one, and I think it's the key really to all of this. And your third tip was communication.
Yes.
Do you guys have, and you may not, but do you have a system? Do you have a weekly sort of partners meeting? Do you have a quarterly partners meeting, or is it just, hey, let's open a bottle of wine tonight and talk about how this isn't working? I mean, you know, you're husband and wife, so, but do you have a system for how you communicate, or is it just sort of
go fishing and talk about it, or we go pick mushrooms, or just get out of the office and decompress maybe in the car going to and from some adventure we're going to. We'll kind of talk about it, but it's
God, that's a hard one because we've been together for so long, and
right?
And even though we've been doing real estate together since 2005.
Yep.
We've worked together for a very long time, so that's a very hard one.
Well, and like and Ron, this I'm directing to you, but like most partners of a real estate professional, you're always the sounding. But even before you were the official sounding board, you were the sounding board for a lot of stuff, right? That's just part of being in a relationship with a real estate professional, is on those drives to and from soccer and wherever else you're running around to, there's a conversation about your business, right? Okay. I would recommend for non-married partners to standardize and set up a methodology for communication, kind of a weekly partners meeting, maybe a quarterly financial review where you take a look at your P&L for your business. Even if you've never looked at a P&L in your life, a P&L is a profit and loss statement. Even if you've never looked at a profit and loss statement for your business and you don't even know what you're looking at, just getting together and looking at the numbers as a team is important. And I think even for husband and wife partners, sometimes you just get so, hey, money's coming in and more is coming in than what we're spending. The company business looks great. But at least once a quarter, sit down with your accountant, or if you want to with me, I'm happy to do it with you, and dig in on your personal P&L or your P&L for your business, just so you can see how it's going. What is your marketing spend? You know, sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. Sometimes you might only be spending 3% on marketing. You could even bump that up a little bit. So in the beginning especially, create standardizations, create a process for communication. Once you've been doing it together for 10 years, whether you're married or not, your communication will be pretty natural and you already know it's working.
And I do need to go back real quick here. We actually do about once a month. He does ask me, how are things going? Yeah. And in regards to escrows, in regards to buyers, where are we? So we actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we actually do.
You do it, but you just do it entrepreneurially, right?
Yes.
You're just kind of.
There's no set date.
There's no set date. Yes. I'd recommend, it's a little, file this under advice, not asked for, but I'd recommend that you guys do set a date for that. So that you know on the third Thursday of every month, we're going to go next door and get appetizers and wine or whatever works for you. And we're going to talk about the business, and, each one of you is going to give a report on key objectives and sort of what's going on. That sort of creating that context for professional communication can help in the communication even between husband and wife who happen to run a partnership together.
That's a great idea.
Ron, Jane, thank you so much for making the trip down here to be in our palatial studios here. We really love having agents who are having success like you guys share with their colleagues. I know for sure with the number of people we have on the radio show today that you've helped some people who are either in the process of creating a team or who've already created a team do it better, and your willingness to give has created that. So thank you so much for being down here today and sharing with everyone.
Keith and Kathy, thank you both as well.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
So quick update. On Friday, we had our Education Foundation event. And at that event, we donated money to various teachers that are originated from Mason-McDuffie. And so far for this cause, we have raised over $760,000 to go to 1,320 teachers, and we had the 20th award ceremony on Friday. And to be very transparent with the audience, Friday I was a little tired, and it'd been a long week, and going to one more event was something I was glad to do because it's my responsibility, but I was a little run down. I was completely recharged by the end of that event. Getting to see the teachers with their family members and peers and principals, and just the joy that they received from getting and receiving and being acknowledged. I won't feel tired going to this event ever again. It's something that I will look forward to. I want to encourage all of you to get more information about it. It's a great cause. The nominations for teachers begin January 1st of 2013. You're going to see a big push around this, candidly, because now it's on my radar. So prepare to be sick of hearing about it. I want everyone to get involved with it. If you want to get inspired and recharged, come to this event next year, or the multiple times that we have it next year. The experience was a great one. So we raised a bunch of money. We made a bunch of teachers happy. It was a great time. So now we're going to shift gears for our remaining time together, and I want to introduce Jeff Weissman from our Berkeley office. Jeff has been a realtor with Better Homes and Gardens Mason-McDuffie since November of 2010. He is, as I mentioned, in our Berkeley office. His focus is primarily on serving investors and buyers in Oakland, Berkeley, Emeryville, and El Cerrito. He's poised to close his 29th transaction this year alone after having been a top producer in 2011, his first full year as a licensed real estate agent. So second year in the business, and you are poised to close your 29th transaction?
Yes, that's right, Keith. And actually this morning was number 27, so the other two will be later this week and next week.
Wow, congrats. That's a heck of a second year in the business. Great job.
Thank you very much.
So if I don't have your attention now, I'm never going to get it. So you better have your notepad and pens ready to pick the brain of Jeff, and I'll do my best to facilitate that for you. So what we really want to dig in with, because, Jeff, I get so many questions from the field about, low inventory, dealing with a buyer, buyers getting burnt out, some of the stuff that we talked with our previous guests about. And I just wanted to take someone who's done the volume that you've done and just really dig in and ask some questions on preparing a buyer.
Sure.
So first of all, what's the best time to prepare a buyer for a counteroffer? How do you do that in your business?
Well, I'm all for teaching and explaining and educating my clients as much as possible, especially with first-time buyers, because they're the ones who need the most handhold.
Sure.
But there's so much to talk about and so much to teach that I also want to be cognizant of the dangers inherent in overwhelming people. So when it comes to counteroffers, I actually prefer not to go into that topic unless we get a counteroffer.
Got it.
Unless, of course, my client asks me questions about it.
Sure. So if you're in an initial buyer consultation, you aren't going to go too deep into, okay, so the first step is we write an offer, and then we get beat. And then the second step is we write an offer, and then we might get a counteroffer. And then when we get a counteroffer, blah, 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 because their eyes just sort of start spinning around like a slot machine.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So let's pretend you did get a counteroffer, though. Just so you've written the offer, you get the counteroffer. How do you walk a buyer through that counteroffer process?
Well, it depends on the situation, of course. One of the things that comes up sometimes is my clients will be operating under the assumption that they're going to get a second chance.
Right.
And so it's important to explain to them that that isn't necessarily going to happen.
Right.
But they're going to want to know the nuts and bolts of the counteroffer process. So I'm going to explain to them things about the timing, things about the strategy, and I'm going to do some research in the background as well. Calling the listing agent is really important. Asking lots of questions.
Good. So I want to reinforce that. So for all of you listening, if you didn't, jot that down. One of the mistakes I see agents make is they don't communicate with their colleague. The REO cycle that we've just come through as a business has sort of created a condition where agents are less likely to communicate with each other because REO agents were impossible to get a hold of. They only communicated via email, blah, 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 right?
Right. And also, as a relatively new agent, This is something that I've had to work on for myself because it's been a little bit intimidating maybe to call a listing agent and ask these kinds of questions.
Well, don't feel intimidated anymore because most of the listing agents you're calling haven't done 29 deals this year, so you're actually done more volume than they have. So don't feel intimidated any longer. Dial with abandon.
Well, the information that I gather from these conversations is so helpful and so useful. And sometimes listing agents are not as forthcoming as perhaps I wish they were. But other times they'll tell me stuff.
Sometimes
really
they're too forthcoming.
Sometimes. Well, I don't know. I don't think they can be too forthcoming because all of that information
is valuable.
Helps me advise my clients to be successful.
Good, good. Next question we have is, if a buyer's submitting an offer that's well below their max, right? Can they expect to see a counteroffer? How do you have that discussion? Maybe they're pre-approved for $750, and they want to write at $6,
right?
And it's a competitive offer, and that's list, right? Or just walk me through some of that dialogue that you have to help a buyer through that process.
Right. Well, the quick short answer is no. They can't expect to get a counteroffer, and we've talked a little bit already about the kind of market we're in and how we're seeing lots of multiple offers.
Yep.
So it's really, really competitive. And I'm counseling my clients as much as I can, as often as I can, that really the best strategy is to put their best offer together from the outset. Because the seller is usually going to accept the best offer.
Right. That's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes what I'll get from a listing agent, and I like to actually explain this to my clients, is a rather terse email saying, thank you for your offer. My seller has chosen to accept someone else or has chosen a different offer. And that's the end of it. There's no second chance. So my buyer is going like, well, I could have come in with another 5, or I could have reduced that inspection contingency. And all I can say is, well, geez, I wish we had been able to do that first time around. So let's use this as a learning experience. And on the next offer, let's come in as strong as we possibly can. I don't want my buyer client to go beyond their comfort zone, but I do want them to put their best foot forward. Because what we want to do really is we want to present an offer that the seller will accept.
Yes.
Generally speaking, if the client goes through a counteroffer process, they're going to end up spending more or being under greater inspection contingency or appraisal loan contingency situations and scenarios than they would otherwise. So they'll really end up, at the end of the day, get a better deal if they come in with a strong winning offer from the get-go.
From the get-go. So one of the biggest, and I'm going off script a little bit on this, but I think it would be valuable. My intuition is, and my experience is, that the hardest part is around price. Usually they're going to trust you if you say you can get the inspections done in the time frame that you've shortened it to. They're going to trust that you can do that. If you tell them that they can close escrow in the time frame, they're okay with shortening the close of escrow time frame. The tough one is price. Is there a dialogue that you normally have with buyers around price? Because inevitably they look at you at some point and say, Jeff, how much should we write at? Right. How do you handle that for your buyers, with your buyers?
I kind of find myself going to a somewhat philosophical plane because...
You get real Buddhist on them?
Well, maybe Zen.
Zen, all right, good.
But because really what they're talking about is value.
Yeah.
And I use the analogy of a gallon of milk, as mundane as that might sound, because when you go into a supermarket and grab a gallon of milk, that's the price of the gallon of milk. You don't walk up to the cashier and say, would you take $4.29 for this? Right. So we're talking about, they say to me, well, Jeff, I don't think the house is worth that much.
Sure.
And my response is, well, okay, it may not be to you, but if you want this house, and if you're up against somebody else who thinks that it is worth that, in fact, worth $50,000 more than that, you're not going to get it. So it's all relative. So it depends on the market. And in this market where we have so much activity and so many multiple offers, I want my client to understand that neither the listing agent nor I nor they determine the value of the house. The market determines the value of the house. Correct. If they want to compete successfully, they have to be on top of that heap.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We get there different ways, but my approach is very similar, or was very similar when I was working with buyers.
Well, we should partner up.
We should. Unfortunately, I've already got a job. Oh. Dang it. I would be a bad partner. But the language that I would use is, because it's tough. So I would say, Jeff, at what number are you comfortable losing the house?
Right.
And of course, we want to try and get it for as far below that as humanly possible, but at least we've set one of the range numbers. So if someone wrote it blank and you didn't get it, would you care?
Right.
And it helps them at least get the top number, and then you may wind your way down if their top number, if there's two other offers and their top number is 100,000 over asking, well, you can probably go below that.
Sure.
If their top number is 5,000 over list and there's 12 other offers, that's a different discussion. But at least if you think about it from this, and everyone has a visceral reaction. At some number, they're like, well, at that number, I wouldn't want it. Okay, so let's get to that number, and then we'll work our way to our offer number from there. But my advice to agents always, and it sounds like this is what you do, Jeff, is stay away from giving them a number. Because if you give them a number and they don't get it, it's your fault. And if you give them a number and they do get it, it's your fault. And let them come up with their number for value, using your value, right? What's this home worth to you? And let them come up with the number and consult them through that process.
I try to know before they've come up with that number.
Yeah.
How that number, whether that is a realistic number to win the contract, so that once they come up with that number, I can say, great, let's go for it.
Right.
Or, you know what, I don't think in this situation you really need to be that strong.
Right.
Let's hold back a little bit. I think we'll still be okay. Or I might say, wow, here are some comps to look at.
Yep.
And I'm not sure that number is going to work for us in this situation. So maybe we should pass on this house and keep looking.
Yeah, because if you stop them from writing the offer, they become less emotionally attached to the home.
And I think they respect me more, too.
They do. And they don't go through that. It's not as emotionally draining on them.
Right.
Because that act for a buyer of putting ink on a piece of paper really means mentally they've already bought the house, right? Emotionally, they've already bought the house. And then they just got to find out if they actually get to. And so having them go through that fewer times, I think, is great. All right, let's get real tactical now. Difference between a counter and an addendum. So what's the difference between a counteroffer and an addendum?
Okay, well, an addendum is a proposed change to the terms of a contract after ratification or acceptance. So in other words, the buyer and seller are in contract, and somebody wants to make a change. Whereas a counter is going to be something that's a change in the terms before ratification or acceptance. I like to think of a counteroffer as a gift from the seller. It really indicates that the seller wants to do business with me and my buyer, and it leaves the door open to negotiations, so there's an opportunity to make a deal.
Now, Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know I see it all the time that agents will put an addendum instead of a counteroffer to something that hasn't been ratified.
Yeah, I think I did that once or twice in the beginning. So.
It happens. So, but to be very specific, this is we're not going to do a contracts class on a webinar. That would be a nightmare. But if you aren't in contract, you use a counteroffer. If you are in contract, it's a gross generalization. But if you aren't in contract, use a counteroffer. If you are in contract, an addendum is appropriate.
Correct.
Good rule of thumb? Okay, good. Now, I do have a question on, actually, we're going to go to the next question because that covers it. So what's the difference between a counter and a multiple counter?
Well, a counteroffer is intended only for your buyer.
Yep.
And the seller can accept other offers while he's waiting for your response. So it's pretty important to keep that in mind and to respond as quickly as possible. Once the counteroffer is accepted, you're going to be in contract.
Yep.
So that can move fairly quickly, and sometimes we see a little twist in that we can get what's called a soft counter, where you'll get an acceptance but an addendum attached to it. A little bit unusual, but sometimes that happens. And in that case, the addendum is oftentimes going to be on something maybe not quite as significant as purchase price. It would be relevant to contingency periods, for example.
Now, in Keith's humble opinion, those should all be embedded in the counter and not be sort of off the grid on an addendum. But again, if you're newer in the business and you're working through your first counter or multiple counter situation, make sure you get with your manager, and they'll help walk you through the process of the right way to do it. So I have a question on Counteroffer is pretty straight. It's just you and one other person. Yes, another offer could come in, but basically you aren't competing with anyone else. Multiple counter, a little different beast, right?
Right.
Because it's a little weird for buyers. In a multiple counter situation, even if they sign it, that doesn't mean they get it. Because if everybody else signs it too, then the seller is going to pick from those batch who signed and pick their favorite, right?
Right, definitely.
So in a multiple counter situation, any tips, any tricks, anything that you do that help your buyers win?
Well, again, going back to the importance of communication with the listing agent.
Mm-hmm.
If I can find out whether any of those other multiple counters or any of those offers are all cash,
Yep.
Or if I can find out whether anybody waived contingencies,
Yep.
or if I can find out whether or not the listing agent believes that if everybody accepts their counters as submitted, will my client win the contract?
Yeah, it's a great question.
So
State that question again.
Well, I'm asking the listing agent, hey, Joe, what if everybody comes back accepting the counteroffer that they received? And the counteroffers can be different to each of those buyers. That's an important distinction as well.
And they usually are.
Yeah.
Because one, they might be countering up on price. Another, they might be countering on terms. And even a third one, they could be countering on both price and terms.
Right.
So every counter in a multiple counter is usually different because there were different pieces to every offer that came in.
So if my question then is to the listing agent, well, if all of those buyers accept those multiple counters, how will we look? Will we win that contract?
Yep.
Or do we need to work on some aspect of our offer because we want to win this contract? We want to get that house.
Now, I'll give you one thing that I used in my career when I was selling, and it worked pretty well, is normally when it comes to price, they do counter everyone at the same price, or if there's an all cash, they may not, but as a gross generalization, they will counter everyone at the same price. So I know if I receive a multiple counter at, just to make up a number, $550, they've countered everyone else usually at the same price. That's been my experience. So what I would do is ask my clients if they were interested in countering themselves and going up to, in this example I said the multiple counter came in at $550, would you like to go back to them and say we'll pay $555? Because everybody else who just signs it will sign it at $500. We've actually bumped ourselves up $5,000 higher. So if everybody else signs it and we're the only ones that increased it, that may help me win in those situations. There were many times where because if everybody signs it, what they're looking for is, okay, who out of this batch is the most motivated, right? If everybody signs a multiple counter, they're really trying to read the tea leaves and go, okay, who's the most motivated? Well, they've all got pre-approvals, they've all shortened, they've all done. If I'm the only one who bumped my offer above their multiple counter, then I'm showing them I'm the most motivated. Right. So that's something that worked for me.
And not only that, I would go one step further and say if the common sense increase is to a nice round number,
right,
tack another $500 or $750 on it.
Yeah, sure.
Just to make it a little bit sweeter.
You'd hate to lose over $500,
exactly.
Right? Hate to lose over $500. All right, next question. Do counteroffers work differently in different types of sales? So REO versus equity versus probate versus.
Yeah, sure. They do work differently. Let's talk about REOs first, for example.
Sure.
So a counteroffer in an REO situation is really equivalent to the bank addendum. The bank addendum supersedes the California Association of Realtors RPA, Residential Purchase Agreement. So it's important as the buyer's agent that you read that bank addendum really, really carefully to make sure where it matches or mirrors your offer and where it differs. One place that it will most commonly differ is the inspection contingency. In my experience, most banks are countering with a 10-day inspection, no matter what I've written.
Sure.
I may have gotten really aggressive with
Wrote
my client.
3.
Yeah, and written 3.
And they counter
so
you
wow,
at 10.
great. So I can call my client and say, hey, we can relax a little bit.
We got more
plenty of
time.
time. So the other thing is that there might be soft contingencies. Well, they are soft contingencies because with a bank addendum, if we don't do anything, let's talk about the inspection contingency on a 10-day, for example. If we do nothing, the bank is going to assume that contingency has been cleared.
Yeah.
Whereas with an equity sale, there has to be a contractual action to occur.
So we don't have time, unfortunately, to go deep into this topic. Maybe we will with Bill Jansen next time we have him on. But California is an active removal state, meaning that you have to actively remove your contingencies, and if you don't remove them, they continue to run in perpetuity. Most of the banks are East Coast institutions, and so they've written their agreements based off of not California real estate law. It's interesting. I don't know of much case law yet. I'm sure it will hit the courts at some point on who wins versus a bank contract and California law. My intuition is California law would win, but at the end of the day, what we care about is getting my buyer into escrow and closing. So who cares who's going to win the lawsuit?
Right. So if there's a difference between the two, I'm going to want to counsel my client to say, look, we're going to work off the bank addendum. The bank
Correct.
is the seller. They're the ones we want to please.
Just know that
comfortable with these terms.
Just know that if your buyer comes back and says, I thought in California we had to, they're probably right.
Yeah.
But, the golden rule, whoever has the gold makes the rules. So the banks are the ones creating the contracts. If you want to get into contract with a bank, you're going to have to play ball with their agreement.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just, I like what you said, Jeff. Really, this isn't rocket science here, but read the agreement, know the differences between the agreement and what you normally do, and then communicate that to your buyer.
Exactly.
Good.
So that's REO. So
yep.
then we have probate sales,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
Yep.
So in a probate sale, and I just went through one of these myself, you may be in contract with the seller, but really you're going to have to wait for the court confirmation. I'm talking about a probate sale where we actually have to have court confirmation
Yep.
as opposed to independent administration.
For the audience's sake, there are some times where you don't need court confirmation, but keep going.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So in a court confirmation situation, you may be in contract with the seller, but there's an opportunity for another buyer to come in and overbid. So you show up at the court and you hope to see nobody sitting across the aisle from you, but
Right.
if you do, they have an opportunity to overbid. In a sense, that's a kind of counteroffer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not coming from the seller, it's coming from another buyer. So your client, the buyer in contract, has an opportunity to overbid the overbid
Mm-hmm.
and stay in the game,
Right.
or say no, walk away. My original offer was my max.
Yep. So each process is a little different. Make sure that you are following agreement. Sure you know what you're paying attention to. Never out of your depth or out of your field. Get with your manager. Take time with your manager to really dig in on what you need. Jeff, you've obviously had amazing success in your first few years in the business. I'm so thankful that you could give us a little bit of your time and share some of your insights and how you're helping your buyers win, because you've obviously been doing that a lot. So congratulations to your success, and thank you so much for sharing your insights with everyone on the webinar today.
So you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
All right, Jeff, thanks so much. All right, everyone, go out there and make it a great week. Thank you so much for all your attention, and we will see you next week on our Monday morning radio show at 10 a.m.